adapted from the novel by the famous Italian-American writer Mario Puzo, and brought to the screen by director Francis Ford Coppola, The Godfather, ranks among cinema's unforgettable works, thanks to its iconic score and endlessly quoted lines. Both the film and the novel tell the life story of a capo di mafia, a mafia boss, Don Vito Corleone, and his family. In truth, it's a sweeping summary of several mafia families' histories. Italian crime families, the very people who gifted the word mafia to the world, are indeed a compelling subject. Perhaps that helps explain the film's popularity. In this episode, we'll look at the lesser-known history of the mafia and trace the origins of terms from omertà to the code, racon. If you're ready, let's begin. Today, we tend to use mafia to label any kind of criminal organization, Japan's yakuza, Albanian crime groups, even Russian oligarch networks get tagged as mafia. But mafia is actually a proper name. It refers specifically to the crime families rooted in Italy, above all Sicily. In fact, Italy is the only state whose laws explicitly address mafia-type associations, naming groups like the Camorra. The word mafia, in its modern sense, first gained attention with an 1863 play often cited as I Mafiosi di la Vicaria. In the play, a gang operates in the Palermo prison. It inducts members through a ritual, observes a law of silence called omertà, and lives off pizzo, gas money or protection money. 2 years later, the mayor of Palermo, Filippo Antonio Gualterio, stated, "Whether we accept it or not, there is a sect of thieves among us. They have secret signs and are unafraid of public officials," becoming one of the first statesmen to speak openly of the mafia. Ironically, his own ties to the mafia would later surface. But where did this organization come from? First, consider Sicily's situation. Sicily has long been isolated from the rest of Italy. From the mid-9th to the late 11th century, it was ruled as the Emirate of Sicily by Muslim Arab administrators. Some say the word mafia dates to this period, possibly inspired by Ayar or Futuwa-style bands of urban toughs that emerged under the Abbasids. Another thesis holds that when Norman feudal rule replaced the emirate, Arab farmers retreated into the hills. In Arabic, mafia can connote a refuge or shaded place. An even stronger theory still points to Arab rule, but via later events. Sicily often changed hands, and in the 13th century came French domination. Against this foreign rule, locals repeatedly revolted. During the Angevin period, insurgents known as the Sicilian Vespers overthrew the regime. Rebels in Palermo reportedly adopted the name of an Arab tribe, Mafir, for themselves. Hence the most credible Arabic etymology of mafia. There's even a folk etymology claiming the Vespers' slogan, Morte alla Francia, Italia anela, death to France is Italy's desire, yields the acronym mafia. But such back formations are typically fanciful, so we needn't dwell on it. What matters is that the term's roots likely reach back to Arab administration, a captivating linguistic journey, but we have more pressing matters. In its modern, organized sense, the Italian mafia emerges in the 1800s. As usual, Sicily was under foreign rule. In the early 19th century, the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies governed the island, again with non-Italian, French, Bourbon rulers in the mix. For centuries, bandits roamed Sicily's rugged countryside. Impoverished peasants often fled to the hills. On large latifundia estates, gabellati, land stewards, rented from absentee landlords in the cities and reduced locals to serf-like metayers. To protect their property, gabellati sometimes collaborated with local bandits. After all, the best way to avoid a thief is to sick him on someone else. This is why mafia still conjures the figure who says, "We'll protect you, just pay up." The mafia's protection is less against others than against its own predation. So the gabellati fed and paid off these bandits, insured against their harm while unleashing them on rivals. Meanwhile, the Bourbon rulers also thought to exploit the mafia, alarmed by Risorgimento, the movement for Italian unification. In a grave miscalculation, they armed certain bandit groups to counter the northern revolutionaries. Thus arose contrasquadre, armed squads headed by gabellati who began to style themselves capo, boss, godfather. Rather than shoring up Bourbon power, this fostered a deep state, a covert network of land barons, bandits, and city lawyers. After unification, as Italy became a single state, the mafia took advantage of political turbulence to entrench itself, especially in the citrus trade. One of the first public cases revealing the new mafia's reach was a strange labor dispute. Between 1875 and 1877, a Lemon Grove owner, Dr. Galati, discovered theft by an employee, Benedetto Carollo, and dismissed him. Soon came anonymous letters and threats. Eventually, an employee was killed. Tracing the letters, Galati reached a friar, Padre Rosario, ostensibly of the Franciscan order, his piety a front. Following the trail further, Galati uncovered a network leading to Don Antonio Giamona, head of the Uditore Mafia in Palermo, and took his findings to the Italian parliament. Thus, the mafia faced legal scrutiny for the first time, and its initiation rituals were exposed. Early mafia initiation drew on Masonic-style secrecy. The sponsor who brought a recruit into the fold was called a compere, a godfather. Yes, the film's title nods to this. A Madonna or Christ icon might be produced and blood dripped upon it. The icon would be burned between the initiate's fingers while an oath was sworn. I burn you like this image. I venerate you like a saint. If I betray these secrets, may I burn as this icon burns. Members referred to their organization as Mamma Santissima, our most holy mother. Joining the mafia meant a bond with almost religious overtones. Small wonder the Palermo mayor called it a sect of thieves. The most important rule of this sect was the law of silence, omertà. This rule actually reaches back to the 16th century, when Sicily was under Spanish control, and echoes older Sicilian customs. Etymologies point to ideas like humility or honor. Indeed, names like società onorata, honored society, appear in mafia lore. But this honor is not the everyday kind. The organization's rules function as a second law, a second morality. What's in the mafia's code? Above all, omertà. Italian pentiti, repentant informers, and the Italian-American mafia's rats are punished harshly. Mafia business must be settled internally. Even if you're shot in an internal conflict, you do not go to the police. He who turns to the state against his brother is a fool or a coward, the saying goes. Another maxim: if you want 100 years of peace, be blind, deaf, and mute. Members might also be punished for infamia, dishonors like compulsive gambling, drugs, or chronic womanizing. So, how did the Italian-American mafia of the Godfather arise? The movement that began in rural Italy had, by the 1890s, grown into a force meddling in politics, abandoning its voice of the underclass image to seize the spigots of power. Meanwhile, millions of impoverished Italians had been emigrating since the 1870s. Some even came to Istanbul, aided from Sardinia, as Ottoman archives note. A few became part of the Levantine community. But the main flow went to America. Before Italians set foot in New York, they passed through Ellis Island, nicknamed l'Isola delle Lacrime, the Island of Tears, because many were turned away and separated from family. The American dream had promised adventure, but American society was deeply conservative in many respects. Italians were slurred as dirty Dagos and suffered frequent violence and lynchings. Dozens were killed by the 1890s. Italians, for their part, were not blameless. In 1891, New Orleans police chief David Hennessy was murdered amid a dispute between mafia families, thrusting the mafia into U.S. headlines and sparking another wave of lynchings. 19 Italians were lynched that year. Italians countered prejudice by celebrating Columbus Day, highlighting that Cristoforo Colombo discovered the Americas. Perhaps due to such tensions, or simply continuing old habits in New Italian, neighborhoods, especially Sicilians, took up small-time extortion. A dapper figure, Don Vito Cascioferro, is said to have taught the art of racketeering. People will both pay you and feel grateful for your protection. In New York, this became known as the Black Hand. Decades later, Italy's Clean Hands Mani Pulite operation would take its name in ironic counterpoint. Not all first-generation toughs were as charismatic as Don Vito. Some, like Giuseppe Morello, were rougher stock. What truly enriched them was prohibition, declared in 1920-1933. With alcohol banned, they built fortunes bootlegging liquor. This boom swiftly expanded the mafia's power. Think Chicago's Outfit and Al Capone. Yet by the 1930s, the old-school Sicilian bosses, the mustache Petes, were out of step. They refused to deal with Irish or Jewish mobsters, kept low profiles, and clung to the past while still maintaining ties to relatives in Italy. A younger generation, the so-called Young Turks, grew impatient. From his villa in Castellammare del Golfo, Don Vito watched events and eventually sent Salvatore Maranzano to America, triggering an internal mafia war, the Castellammarese War. The man who'd taught Americans the pizzo trade now intervened as capo di tutti I capi, boss of all bosses, to sweep aside backward compatriots who couldn't seize new opportunities. The modernizers won. New York's five families would henceforth run the underworld through a commission. But it's a dirty world. Soon the five families moved against Maranzano himself, and with his assassination, the new order under Lucky Luciano took shape. Though weaker today, that structure persists. The Genovese, Gambino, Lucchese, Bonanno, and Colombo families form New York's branch of La Cosa Nostra, our thing, the very system Mario Puzo dramatized. The mafia evolved from a parochial Sicilian tradition into the realm of sharp-suited businessmen, double-breasted jackets, and Ray-Bans, a rise made possible by ties to the state, especially the United States. By the 1940s, Mussolini's fascist regime viewed the Italian mafia as a threat and launched sweeping crackdowns. Don Vito Cascioferro ended up imprisoned in Corleone, and now you know where Don Vito Corleone's name echoes from. These operations also handed the American state and the mafia a shared enemy, fascist Italy. In 1942, the French liner SS Normandy caught fire and capsized in New York Harbor during conversion to a troop ship. Suspicion fell on Italian-born dockworkers. The government needed someone to police the waterfront Italians. Enter the mafia. Lucky Luciano, then in federal custody, agreed to cooperate, won a sentence reduction, and was released. In 1943, during Operation Husky, the Allied invasion of Sicily, the U.S. again enlisted Sicilian mafia contacts for intelligence, guidance for troops, and links to anti-Nazi locals. A durable bond between America and the mafia was forged in Wedo. After the war, U.S. authorities would also lean on the mafia against communists. Though deported, Luciano continued to direct operations from afar. By these years, as portrayed in Martin Scorsese's The Irishman, the mafia dominated unions and had senators in its pocket, relationships that cut both ways. In the 1960s, U.S. plots to assassinate Castro in Cuba allegedly used mafia intermediaries, schemes wild enough for a whole podcast. From exploding cigars to poisoned ice cream, none successful. Meanwhile, the Kennedy assassination and failed Cuba plots changed the climate. Initially, the mafia rejoiced at John F. Kennedy's election. His father, Joseph, had once been a liquor smuggler, but Attorney General Robert Kennedy declared war on organized crime. As in The Irishman, the government moved via Jimmy Hoffa and the Teamsters. In October 1963, Joseph Valachi of the Genovese family turned informant, breaking omertà in televised Senate testimony that exposed the Italian-American mafia. According to FBI reports, New Orleans boss Carlos Marcello, when deported to Guatemala, said, "We have to get rid of Kennedy." Chicago boss Sam Giancana fumed that they'd helped JFK win and been betrayed. It's thus quite plausible the mafia had a hand in the Kennedy assassination, a topic hotly debated at the time. It was in this climate that Mario Puzo published The Godfather. With Valachi's revelations and internecine wars, America ended the 1960s obsessed with the mafia, yet neither the assassination nor the novel's success could save them. In the 1970s, the RICO Act armed prosecutors against organized crime. The door to state collaboration closed. The mafia devolved into a network of gangs vying with other criminal outfits. The transformation, completed by the 1990s, is captured brilliantly in The Sopranos, where the Godfather's characters are suave, the Sopranos are harried, threadbare, and perpetually scrambling. In Italy, the 1990s saw magistrates Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino launch massive anti-mafia prosecutions. Cosa Nostra had grown so brazen it waged street warfare. Toto Rina led assaults with AK-47s. Those courageous magistrates were murdered by bombs. Yet Italy pushed on. The Mani Pulite, clean hands investigations in the 90s also struck at the political nexus. Today, Cosa Nostra has lost much of its former power. Camorra, Naples, is weakened by internal strife. But Ndrangheta, Calabria, remains strong, often cited as the wealthiest mafia organization worldwide. With that, I leave you with an offer you can't refuse. Let's meet again in a new episode. Stay with justice, stay with the law. Be well.